Hi, everyone, and thanks for being here at this Mill URL talk that we're going to have today on this topic. Is the European music industry in good shape? Before we start, I'd like to thank the Mill for giving us this opportunity to do this talk that was scheduled in March, but for some obvious reasons we couldn't make in real life. We have this opportunity to talk about this topic right here on the internet. And I'm very honored to have this very large panel. Today we have Coralie Cousin from France, Sandrine Bileci also from France, Esther Van Der Poel from Netherlands, Sally Gross from the UK, and Pierluxx from Belgium. And so let's get to it right now. We're going to talk about music artists and how they feel in this specific job. So working in music today can lead, in my vision, to two fundamental questions. How do you become the next Avicii? And also, how do you avoid becoming the next Avicii? Of course, I'm saying this as in, when you're an artist, you can wish to be as successful as Avicii was, but also you don't want to go as far as he went, because he went to the very dramatic situations that we all know he's been through. So in success as an indifference or in failure, pursuing a career in the artistic field can lead to an immense satisfaction as well as a deep disappointment. And being an artist today also has the specificity of facing a constantly evolving job. We're in the streaming age. A lot of the things that young artists are going through are new things that artists that were selling CDs 20 years ago maybe can't understand the same way. I was invited a couple of days ago to talk at a Medium talk on this topic. And I was talking about how much the telephone is one of the most important instruments today, as it was a couple of years ago with drums or guitars or keyboards. A lot of young artists are facing the reactions indirect through social medias, which can affect not only the music that they're creating, but the effect that the reactions of their music can provide. So for this talk, we're going to have a lot of different professionals that have been working in a lot of different fields in music. And I want to start right now with Sally Ann. So Sally Ann, you started a career in the music industry as a music manager in the 1990s, and you were the first woman to work as a director of artists and repertoire at Mercury Records in the UK, and you also chaired the first panel on gender in the music industries at the In the City Music Conference in Manchester. And today we're very interested to talk with you about mostly a study you ran in 2017 that was called Can Music Make You Sick? So first question I want to ask is, not everybody's wondering how artists can feel. And you've been working in the music industry for a long time. And I was wondering, what made you care about this specific topic of health in the music industry?
Thank you. Hope you can hear me. Well, I think that topic has always been with me in the music industry. It's always been something that has floated around in the atmosphere of the music industry. If you work with artists, you become very, very well aware that artists work, part of their toolkit, what they do is expressing emotion. That's what people always say. And if we were to think about emotion as something that was in the earth, like we think about fossil fuels or water or something, we always have that kind of belief that all of those things are infinite. We just keep using them and using them. It's all cool. And then one day we're like, okay, something happened there, it's gone, or it's polluted, or So it always seemed to me a kind of strange thing that we worked with people who we expected them to use their emotional toolkit for our satisfaction in one sense, you know. And in some ways, I think that if we thought about that in an anthropological sense, we would see that there's always been shaman, there's always been, you know, there's always been someone through whom we channel the unknown or the spiritual. You know, there's lots of anthropological ways that we could understand the service of the musician to the people, to the community, right? So for me, that was always something that I was kind of always aware of. I was born and raised at that age where, as a teenager, you know, that's what we were doing. Everybody was making music. The punk scene happened. It was very DIY. We were squatting. We were very kind of anti. There was a very, very strong feeling of anti establishment. But by the 80s, all of that converted into a whole nother thing, you know, and then people were becoming their own businesses and blah, blah, whatever. And I was in that at the beginning of rave music, the start with drum and bass, with club scenes. So I was very, very well aware that we were part of converting what was at one point a kind of community of DIY people into the machinery of industry in a way that maybe we didn't notice it happening. We weren't conscious of that in the same way that, you know. So then once I converted, you know, once I was in a major record label, I was like, wow, I'm in the machine. You know, somehow I got right inside the machine. And now I see what happens, you know, and I began to see something very different, experience something very different. Even though I'd been a music manager and I'd put those deals together and put people in the place, once I was in that position, it was very different. It felt very different. And so I've always been very aware of how part of what we're doing in these communities is servicing in what I would, you know, maybe once was called a spiritual state, maybe now is called something about, you know, in the secular world, it becomes very difficult to articulate what is going on in those spaces. But I think for the people in those spaces, for musicians and for groups of musicians, you will always hear those kind of conversations about channeling, about coming together. You know, you just hear people talking about it as if we were tribes on the planet hundreds of years ago, but bringing that behavior into the tension of the end of capitalism as we see it right now is pretty intense. And I think I began to feel like it was having a very, very significant impact on people's mental health. And I could see that. I was around it and I could see it, you know. Yeah. It's the largest known study on the mental health of musicians. Yeah, and my co-author is Dr. George Musgrave. But I started writing about the idea that music might make you sick quite a long time ago. I could see that I felt like, you know, everyone says to you all the time, music's, you know, this is amazing and everybody loves music. And I was like, whoa, maybe we've got this all wrong. You know, maybe there's something going on here where, because I always say it's a lot like smoking weed, you know. I live in a community and have lived in a community where that's very, very normal to smoke weed. And no one, like, if you say it's bad for you, everyone goes, no, 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 no. And I'm like, hang on, guys, it's still smoking. You know, it's still, like, I'm a mom, I've got 4 kids. I can't, you know, I'm like, it's not taking a moral perspective. I'm just going, let's think about this for a minute. And so I just think that something around this idea of being a musician had a kind of sealed atmosphere where you couldn't question it. You couldn't question what was happening to people. It was like, this is your dream, this is what you must do. So I was like, look, you know, maybe we've got this all wrong. Maybe we need to be turning the lens the other way and going, what is it about this, particularly post, you know, once streaming came in, once, you know.
Were you satisfied with the responses you had? So you on how many people did you run this this study?
Well, initially we had over 2,200 responses. We had more responses than that, but we could only count the ones from the United Kingdom. But we had people from Australia and America. We would, you know, it was just like, if we'd opened it up at that moment, I think we would have had many more. But we had to kind of close it down because we were funded by a charity called Help Musicians that have done a lot of really great work for musicians. They used to be called the Musicians Beneficial Fund. And they're really old, I think the oldest music charity in the world, for specifically to help set up to help musicians.
As far as I know of all the things that I've been looking through from my perspective in France, I feel like the most advanced countries on these questions in Europe are the UK. And I also feel like the Netherlands are a very invested country. So I'll address my next question to Esther. You're a personal artist coach, right? And you founded PACCT, right? Which is providing coaching and counseling for artists.
Yeah, I started like 5 years ago, and I'm a mental coach, a mental life coach for artists and creative entrepreneurs.
Okay.
So, I was working in the music industry also, like, I think 15 years, 20 years before, more in the dance area. So I was working as booking agent and later on with a big event company called Identity, where I do everything for the artists. And then I also feel what Sally also said, like, there's more depth into the industry, and I see the problems with all the artists that I took care of, but I couldn't do because I was a booker, or I did it for the events for Identity. So I missed that. And in my past, I had already had done a study for social work, but I didn't do anything with it. So 5 years ago, I thought I want to make a difference in the music industry the way I know it. And then I do all kinds of, coach, schooling. And then 5 years ago, I started my business.
How would you describe, I'm very interested in having the perspective as an artist, and I failed to introduce myself earlier, but I'm a music producer.
Okay.
So, when do I need counseling, and what is it exactly?
Well, when I started, I noticed that a lot of artists that I work with were having a lot of pressure inside themselves, but also outside. And especially, you were talking about the phone earlier. Yeah. A lot of social media is going on right now, of course, and all kinds of expectations. And that's for a DJ. I'm talking about now the DJ industry. They've really found it very hard, because if they're making music, they're alone. They're very introverted people. And then suddenly they have to perform on stage, and that's very extroverted. So that was also that they really feel very hard and difficult to do that. Also, they're not living in the moment, especially the really big artists. They've started with passion and love and becoming bigger and bigger, and then suddenly they can't enjoy the moment anymore. They just think of more. I have to make a new record, or I want to perform on Tomorrowland, or so they can't get satisfied. So it's like a hamster in a roundup thing, they can't stop. So, or constantly the mask on. They constantly have to say, hi, they never can be themselves. So these are, and there are a lot more questions that they come to me for, but these are some of these examples. So it's really more like the feeling that's not you're not living in the moment and constantly feel the pressure.
And what kind of overall feeling you'd say you can tell from the artists that I wanted to say the artists that you're working with, but in the overall music industry in the Netherlands, how do you feel about the way this question is treated? Like we said earlier, there's help musicians in the UK. Is there such thing in the Netherlands, or is there a feeling that artists want to get together? I know there's is it ADE? I know there's lots of talks.
Yeah. But in the beginning,
centered around the dance music, and I was wondering how popular this topic was in this.
Well, I really miss it because I think England did a much better job on this. I started 5 years ago asking ADE, can we please talk about this? Because we talk about labels and we talk about new music, but nobody was talking about the mental state. And in the beginning, when I started my business, I know a lot of people in the dance industry, and everybody was saying, oh, you do a great job, great. It's not for my artists, but for everybody else. So there was a big taboo also going on. And then for years and years, I keep on trying also with ADE. And then we just started like, I think 4 years back or something, really and then after Avicii, then really a lot of managers were thinking, oh my God, this can happen. As well, at first I speak to a lot of managers who also thought, I can do that. I speak to my artist and I can make sure he's feeling okay, or the booking agent. But they all have different interests. Also a booker, also a manager. So they're not really for the artist, even if they think. Well, they're also thinking about the 15% or the 10% booking fee or management fee. So that's really also a very tough subject.
What are the young artists saying? I know you're counseling students at the University of Arts in Utrecht, right?
But that's more of a teacher. So that's not really my coaching. I do coaching, but that's for the students that they have their internship or something. It's not
good.
The mental state.
I was wondering if University of Arts was music or overall arts.
It's overall arts.
Okay.
Yeah, but I do events especially. So I do the coaching for the internship.
Okay, good.
I see Sally wants to say something or not.
I do.
I see a finger of Sally.
Oh.
Hi, yeah.
Okay,
Sorry,
okay.
I just wanted. I wanted to say that it's just interesting hearing you talk, and that when you said, "What can you do?" How can you get as an artist? It's one of the things I found very interested in our study is, number one, how artists will try to wonder what it is that they can do. And I'm not saying, and I think, yes, we need to do things to make ourselves healthy and to be okay. But what our study revealed was, how systemic the working practices of the music industry are, that make it so difficult for people to have time out. And I think, I thought that, it's difficult to focus in on one particular artist, but I think in the Avicii documentary, for instance, it's very clear to see how it really highlights how the different interests and the different interests of different parties ignore his interests and what he needed. It's very clear, and it's not pointing the finger at somebody, but it's also how the different interests. And I think that it's important with this conversation, now that we opened that conversation in the UK, it's certainly, I've given talks at major labels all over the country, and we talk with our students about it. But I think it's very important for the musicians themselves not always to think they are responsible or you don't need to be Superman. You don't need to be, you need to be able to go, actually, this is wrong. Nobody should be working 24/7 and never turn their phone off and reply to every email and make a new track every 5 minutes. You know what I mean? So we have to really rethink and be conscious of what is happening to people in the hamster wheel. If it's just going,
Exactly, definitely. Definitely. I want to address my next question to Pierre, who's the youngest of our panel. You are a managing artist, and you have a formation as a coach, and you're from Belgium. And I want to tell you actually about the hamster wheel. So you're as a young professional in music. Do you feel like it is important for you and for your relationship with your artist to be interested in these questions at the early stages of the career you're building?
Yes, it's really important because, and especially in Belgium, because I wouldn't say that. Yes, it's really important because, and especially in Belgium, because I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't qualify the Belgian music industry as an industry. I prefer to define it as a training center, because all confirmed artists were obliged to sign a deal in France or to export. And then this is due to the size of the country and also to the infrastructure, which is not yet very developed. So you imagine that the mental health of artists is completely neglected, and I would even say that it's not even questions, and especially in the world of hip hop. I think it's because there's a big gap between experienced artists, independent artists who have a team, and also single artists who have to manage everything. And there's a palpable frustration among the single artists who can feel abandoned. And yeah, there's no follow-up at this level, and it's really important to learn how to listen artists and how to understand artists, because people think that artists are just to write music or play keyboards or whatever, and they don't understand that they're humans also. They have feelings, they have emotions, and they give it to the public, and it's really hard.
How do you feel about this topic, especially in the music world you're interested in, rap music? We got in touch because I wrote a piece on how I feel this topic is not was not talked about enough in French rap, and I'm including Belgian rap in it because we do rap in the same language. And to me, the importance that this music has in our countries is so important that it could be a way to be together and say something strong about how this industry works and how we can make things better. How do you feel about, say, the responsibility rap music can positively have on this topic, especially in Belgium?
Rap music is one of the most music listened in the world, I think. So it's the new pop music. So all the young kids and everybody listen to rap music today. So it's like it can be advices for young people, for example. So I think it's important to vehiculate a message of positivity and also of self-caring, I don't know if you can say it. And for me, rappers are the new politics. They have a power that they don't imagine, and they have a responsibility to share messages and good thoughts to the people.
Yeah, I feel like for a lot of for a lot of youngsters, there's a stronger feeling that you can be a part of this change. And I'm saying this because I know you've been hosting I don't remember how you named it, but conversations, and you brought artists and managers to expand on the things that they're doing. So you don't want to just be a manager, just like we were mentioning earlier with Esther. You don't want to just be there to book artists. You want to be a part of a stronger experience. And I feel like young people like you understand that it's going to be a lot more than just managing and just thinking about the percentage that you can get off an artist.
Like I said, in Belgium, I don't. There isn't any industry because all the youngsters want to be rappers, want to be famous, and they have a dream about it. Because they don't know the reality behind. And my dream, and I think it's possible to do it. My goal is to learn to youngsters that in an industry you don't have just a rapper or a beat maker or a video maker. You have a lot of people that can help and that can be a part of this industry. If you have a lot of rappers but no managers, it's impossible to grow together. And that's one of my goals. I want to learn to youngsters and all the people that we have to create an industry, and it would be good if we care about these questions of mental health and those.
Staying on this, on this, I myself, when I started wondering about these questions, found out about one job that I had no idea was existing in music, and we're going to. I'm addressing the next question to Coralie. Coralie, who's a physiotherapist and works with musicians, and who's been specialist in retraining musicians' hands for 20 years. You opened your own music clinic in Paris, and you wrote a book called The Musician, a High-Level Athlete. So you work mostly with instrumentalists, and I want to know about what made you care so much about the articulations of artists and how important it is as an artist to take care not only about how you feel on the inside in your head, but how to feel physically, your physical health.
My professional experience in conservatory, the École Normale of Music and Orchestra, I met more than 6,000 instrumentalists from all styles of music, from classic to jazz to more modern. And I must say that today, the injury for the body is stress, and it's very important to speak about stress and to help musicians to work with it. There was something who was quite fantastic in this confinement when a musician asked me some video consultation online. I always refused, and I was very skeptical to propose this kind of help. But at the moment I proposed this video consultation, musicians from all around the world got in touch with me, as well as therapists. And I realized how musicians were really looking for questions. And I had the possibility to see musicians in Germany, in Japan. I could see a musician who were preparing a competition in Israel. And it was really very fantastic. And I discovered also how I could speak with other therapists who were looking for questions for their musician. So the musicians were suddenly able, it was really magic for them to be able to play with their instruments and have precise advice, very simple advice. just simple things like you are never cutting your work, you are never warming up, you are never stretching. So how can your body work 6 hours a day if you don't respect him? And I had very good returns. And of course, this possibility of doing this video consultation, they give to musicians other opinion on their posture. And we never touch the technique. We can give a lot of advice without touching the technique that the musician has spent hours building it. And it was really very interesting. And I think I wouldn't have said the same thing in March than in June.
Okay.
It was really sharing with other therapists, sharing with musicians my experience. And I think we have to go on working all together by this way. I already work with the Professor Altenmüller,
yeah,
the big specialist on the stress and the big emotion musicians have when they play, and when the body doesn't answer exactly, they have a feeling of disaster. They have a little pain, and all the world suddenly it's on the floor. So, because there's not enough prevention in conservatory, there's not enough of physiotherapists who knows the artists, because it's a specialized treatment. You know that artists, you can't speak, you have to be sensitive to speak with artists. You have to learn to understand their fear, because they play with emotion. So you have to calm things. And really, there's a great possibility. I realize, like, in the world, there were so much musicians who were looking for some solution. And it's true that on internet, there's a lot of proposition of stretching, musculation. But how can you choose exactly what is good for you if you are very nervous or very flexible? How can you know the good thing to choose with your age? Not the same therapy if you are a young prodigy, a student who is getting out of a conservatory and competing in an international competition, or a high-level athlete, or a musician who is, after all his day under a screen, is going to practice his instrument. So there's a lot of elements that you have to know.
Right.
And really, like this, you can really propose simple things and really calm the stress. It's very important that to health and artists, they are sensitive. So you must really understand that you have to be sensitive and know who you are in front of you when you are speaking to an artist. But there's a lot of question. Musicians stay with their pain and they overwork on their pain. And this is one day the body says, no, it's too much.
Right.
So if musicians have pain, they have to consult their doctor. They have to see doctors who are specialized, because musician feels guilty. They feel guilty because they have pain. They think, if I have pain, I'm not going to record this CD, they're going to throw me. They're scared.
I think it's very interesting because you work mostly with, I want to say, more traditional musicians. You work with school, you work with people who are going to conservatories. This feeling of you have to you have to overwork. I think it's interesting when you compare it. You have it when you're going to the conservatory and you want to show everyone you're the best. And you can have it, going back to the electronic music world, you have it with DJs that are going to overstay, play 12 hours shows and still be there after that, just to show that they can do it. And I think it's fascinating that there's this specific function, physiotherapist, for musicians. I'm not sure it exists in lots of more modern fields. I'm not sure there's a physiotherapist for a tired DJ. I don't know how important that would be, but I think that's an interesting question. And I wanted to go back on, you mentioned you've been working with the Dr. Alton Mueller, who's based in Hanover, and he's one of the main searchers in the field of neurophysiology and neuropsychology for musicians. And I feel like there's lots of researches in this field. I want to say more traditional music, and I was wondering if you had, like you were saying, a strong group of European physiotherapists or therapists or health specialists that you were working with. And I want to see it in new music as a good thing to try to duplicate for the next generations, and lots of things to get inspired by. So you're working with Dr. Alton Mueller. Would you say that Europe is on a good path in terms of health for artists?
I think the thing which is very interesting is that musician is the repetition of the movement. They repeat, and this we can find it in all styles of music. And sometimes when you repeat too much in a bad position, sometimes the brain doesn't understand what is the good movement. And if you go too far on stress, emotion, sometimes the brain doesn't find anymore the good way. So the really important is to do prevention, to build strategy, to put physiotherapists in the school, and that the musician, they know that they can reach a physiotherapist who knows what she speaks about and gives simple advice. And really, I really, it's not possible to say to a musician, if you have pain, just stop. 3 months. No, he feels guilty. He needs to know how to organize himself, how to get cured, how to go on playing with his instrument.
Right.
Because the first thing I say, of course, stop playing 1 hour and a half, then start again playing 10 minutes. Do a little breaks, 10 minutes. Keep in touch with your instrument.
Right.
Artists, they can't stop having the relation with the instrument, because if they stop the relation they have with the instrument, they have the feeling the tongue was cut. They can't express themselves.
Right.
So these are very important aspects of all the work we can all do together. And now with the website is fantastic. All the information we can get all together. Very interesting.
And so we mentioned a lot of different areas of health, and can also be connected to your habits and your behaviors. And next question to Sandrine. You used to work in the music industry. Now you're a naturopath, and you're providing vitality checks, nutrition coaching. You provide workshops in your city, in Lyon. And I want to know more about your practice and what brought you from working in the music industry to wanting to be a help somewhere else in the music industry.
Yes, I worked about 10 years in the music business in a distribution company. I was a label manager, and then I ended with some time doing marketing as well. I just got some way fed up, and I think I was lucky enough to kind of avoid a burnout. I was just very tired, mostly by the very long working days, and also the change of the music business towards digital business. I unluckily was in kind of old school companies, so it was a difficult time. But I also think like I wasn't just prepared enough to kind of deal with all these kind of expectations. And after a break, I would realize that I would just pursue a career in health and become a naturopath, which is like a holistic health practitioner. So my practice in a way is I try to analyze my patients' habits and lifestyle, and try to understand the root cause of the issues they have. So it could be like sleep disturbances. They would wake up every night at 4, for example, or they would have trouble falling asleep. Some would have like digestion issues, and most of them, since we're talking about music, most of them will have like stress and mental health issues. So I just try to make like both worlds meet in my practice. So my patients are regular people, but some of them are like musicians and music business professionals. And what I see is that we are all kind of in this industry, they are all facing some disbalance between their personal work and their personal life and their professional life. So this is something that is obvious for touring artists. So you would go on a tour for like 1 month, 2 months, every night, different city, and then you'd be a couple of months home doing nothing, let's say. But it's also true for music business professionals like bookers, touring agents, whatever. So they would be sitting at work in an office in the day, and then spending their time evenings at clubs or festivals in the summer. So as well, like as we said, and with Sally and Esther as well earlier, I think the biggest struggle that we face in the industry is systemic. So there is nothing I can personally do for that, but it's like we need to kind of change the taboo and open the discussion about mental health, because as I just said, it's not only about the musicians. So the musicians should have this weight on their shoulder that they have to cope with their stress and anxiety, but it's also like we need to have like an open conversation within offices, within different businesses, so publishers, tour agents, managers, musicians. We just really need all to sit down and talk and think about what is possible, even though what I mean, in my opinion, like the main obstacle would be money, not in terms of how to fund health, but we are all in a business to make money in a way, like to earn a living. So we really need to balance these needs with our more personal with our more personal needs, especially about health and mental health.
So about that, based on Sally Ann's model that we're very thankful for, you and I, and the collective that we created around these questions called CURA, we ran the first French study on mental health for artists. And as you were saying, we wanted to include music professionals. So it's the first for artists and music professionals in France. So what can you tell us about the results of this first French study?
Yes, so we ran this study last year in May, and we published results in October. And our panel was 500 persons. Half of them were male and females, and half of them were musicians and music professionals. So it was kind of an even panel, and we were pretty happy about this distribution. And well, not surprisingly, we kind of have the similar results as Sally Ann's study in the UK. So we had 4 out of 5 people who said that they are having that they are struggling with anxiety. And we also have 25% who got diagnosed in their lifetime with depression at least once. It's really important to understand the figures within the music industry, but also compare them with the rest of France. And the latest figures about depression in France are 10% of the population will suffer from depression once in their lifetime. So what happens is like musicians or music business professionals in France are 2 times more likely to be diagnosed with depression. So it really shows about their sensitivity. And it really shows that we need to take care of them. When we present these figures, we did this at Mama Festival in October. We had several occasions to talk about the results of the study, but most of the people would say, yeah, but artists are sensible people, sensitive people, so they wouldn't go into this business if it weren't for this sensitivity. They wouldn't be able to work in a bank, for example. So it's normal that they suffer from depression. I think the biggest challenge is really to have people understand that, okay, these people are more prone to have depression, but it is our duty as an industry to care for these people twice as much. So it's important that we really get these figures circulating in France and anywhere else, so that people get aware that mental health is not just an artist problem or just a personal issue. It really is everyone's duty to take care of that. The second big result we had about this survey was about sexual and moral harassment. So we have 1 out of 3 women who declared that they were suffering or that they had suffered from sexual harassment. And we have 1 people out of 2, especially women, most of them were women, who suffered from moral harassment. Right. So if you're talking about mental health, again, we're not talking about feeling guilty or being alone in the dark and anxious. It's, as we said, it's a system, and everyone is concerned. So we see we see the power of this taboo, because people don't really know how to talk, who to talk to. And as a matter of fact, in our figures, we also had 3 out of 5 people who didn't seek for help, and half of them didn't know that they needed help, or they didn't know who to ask help. So this is why it's really important to have, again, this talk on mental health, because the obstacles towards good mental health is structural, as we said, but it's also pretty much based on gender. Okay, so we need to collectively think of solutions. So on my side, what I do in my practice is that I talk about nutrition, I give relaxation techniques. Like, my approach is pretty much holistic and complementary to, let's say, what physiotherapy can do. But the aim of the collective that you and I, Shykd, created is really to open and to have answer to opportunities that we have to talk about it. So today it's meal. Tomorrow we don't really know because we are still facing coronavirus situation. But yeah, I hope we can discuss and people will get more aware of that for themselves and for the others.
Definitely. Well, about this togetherness on this question, there's a recent tender that was published by Creative Europe, and that's aiming to run a study on the health and well-being of music creators, which is what we've been talking about since we gathered together. And I believe it is the first of its kind. Correct me if anyone knows that I'm wrong. So I was wondering if you believe that working together on a European study can lead and can help state a clearer diagnosis of what's going on and help us work alongside concrete solutions that can be sharing clearer informations or putting together workshops or finding ways to help struggling artists to find the funds to get the help they deserve. I'm going to address this question back to Sally Ann if you want to answer me.
Can we do something about it in some ways?
Can we do it together with different countries that are facing the same problem?
Well, I think that we are now all facing a similar problem. I think the interesting thing about COVID-19 is that we've seen this, and so in a metaphorical sense, we can see, the kind of, can we do it with other countries? I think I would say, echoing what Sandrine said, I've been talking now about music and mental health since 2017 around the world. I've been to all kinds of, in some ways I never expected the reception that this work got. And, to me, it felt very important, but I wasn't sure people were going to hear what I was saying or hear what we really wanted was, I didn't know if people would hear what the musicians were saying, which for me was very important. But I think that the recognition from the music community is very strong. And certainly the hip hop community in the UK, even in America, I've heard, in the drum and bass community, they have a music and mental health thing. So I think people are getting together and we need to be communicating with each other and we need to be working on this. But at the same time, I think in terms of the European support, individual governmental support for musicians, at this point, there has to be some kind of universal basic income across Europe to bring all musicians away from living like they're always on the edge of the cliff, like I'll be 10 hours and I'll do it for 12 hours and, I'll be Superman. Like, nobody is Superman. That's just a fairy story, and there has to be, if we care about culture, and culture is so important to the well-being of humans in lots of ways, like for our identity, our understanding, our empathy, we need, people need support across the board. And I think I'm very interested in the way that I think music and the way we use music will become more, in some sense, medicinal, in some sense more to do with healing. Like more, even though it's always had that ability, I think that aspect of it is going to become more and more emphasized in the digital uses of music, in a way. Like, we're going to move more towards a way in which music and neuroscience will show how music stimulates memory and serotonin and all the things that we need to feel better, to feel good, so I think that's going to be interesting. But I absolutely think that we have to address the very fundamentals of the economic impact of being a musician, the time it takes. How much time of your life have you spent being a musician? It's a long time. You can't just give it up and go, oh, okay, now I'm going to be a bus driver, or I'm going to, we only have an amount of time. And this is the time we've spent this time with music, learning, this repetition, this, so it's very, that's very important. We have to learn how to live with social media But social media is very new, right? You know, when tobacco smoking was introduced in the 60s, people thought it was cool, right? They didn't say, oh, that's going to kill millions of people. They were just like, whoa, give me a cigarette, you know? So now people are like, don't give me a cigarette, right? That's what it's going to be like about social media. We're going to learn that that's not good for us, right? So we've got a lot of learning to do, but we need urgently to address very fundamental questions about how people live, and people need economic support in order to breathe. You have to have bread. They are very fundamental things, and we are at a crucial moment, and I think the music community has a role to play in that.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like it's a great moment to put the emphasis on community and find solutions that are going way out of our borders and out of our very specific cultures. I think we have this in common, that there's lots of artists, and there's going to be lots of artists forever, hopefully, and most of them are just going to follow the same path of creating, being there, and not wondering too much. Your artists are going to be artists whatever happens, and I definitely agree with Sandrine when she says that professionals around them have the duty to be as helpful as they can, to make them practice their passion with a smile on, as much as they can. I want to ask my very long question also to Esther. Personally, I am a newbie in terms of leading these conversations on mental health. And since you participated in more panels than I did, I was wondering, what's your opinion on having these conversations throughout the years? Do you feel like more people are getting invested? Do you feel like getting together, say, as Europeans, is making this move onward?
Yeah, I think it's very good to make things more aware, of course. So I found that very important. What I find is in Holland that I sometimes do a lot of panels, and then sometimes it's going to be every time the same. That I sometimes think, what's the next step? So that's why I think that what Sally is doing, and also with the investigations and stuff, that's very important to do that and to make it bigger and to make it much more aware. So that's more my thinking sometimes when I'm also doing panels on school, and I think it's very important. But sometimes I get the same questions and the same things going on, and the last time a student asked me, like, I was there the last time, and all the same question and the same problems. What do we really gonna do to change? So that's also in my head, like, okay, can we do more? So that's more. So I think it's very important to see what all the other countries also are doing. So also this panel is very nice that you have a physio. I didn't know it, so it's very nice to meet everybody and to be connected on some way. So I'm for of that, but there's still a step to do, and I don't have that yet, so it's in my head as well.
Okay. I think we're towards the end of our panel. We know, Sally and Esther, you said you had to leave right now, so if you have to leave, go, and I'll ask my last questions to who's remaining.
It was brilliant and very nice to meet you.
I'll just ask Pierre the last question, and this is going to be a very nice question about COVID, and I want to know how you feel about the current situation and the uncertainty of this situation as a manager. I was wondering how your artist, you're working with a rapper named Lomaik. I was wondering if this situation is affecting him, as in, is he, I don't know, frightened about what might happen for his career, or on the contrary, especially in rap music, when I don't know how much this situation is really stopping you, because you can keep being productive, recording on lots of songs and planning on what you can release from now on, and think maybe you can have shows later. How do you feel, and how's that?
At the beginning, I thought it could be an opportunity to launch music, and I was telling myself that people were home, so they were able to listen to music, and they would want to listen to music, but it wasn't the case. So it was difficult at the beginning, because we tried to launch one music, and it didn't take, because there were too much proposition, and people didn't want to listen to music. I realized that listening to music is got a link with the movements. For myself, for example, I love to listen to music when I have to go to a point A to a point B. I love to listen to music when I can move, and there were also studies that proved that the the streaming were lower than usual during these periods. So it was complicated at the beginning, because it was yes, sad a little bit, and frustrated about the situation, because he wanted to share his music, to share his art, and he doesn't love really the social media, so he couldn't do like a Tory Lanez, for example, who made a great move with Tarantine Radio, create an emission of entertainment, and could bring something else than music to his audience. He doesn't really like it, so it was complicated. But right now in Belgium, it's we can go outside, not too much, but we're living not like normal, but we already filmed a clip video, and I think people are ready and aware to receive music, so I think it's going better for the situation. At the beginning, it was really complicated and frustrating for everybody.
Wow. I hope it will go well for you, and well for every one of us. Before we end this talk, I want to say I feel like it's exciting to have this conversation with such different profiles and people from different countries with different perspectives. And I'm fairly convinced that on this question, a lot is going to move onward, as much as the more we get together and the more we talk about these things together, the more profiles are getting known, the more artists will have a stronger understanding and stronger links to be able to reach out to the people that they really need, the physiotherapists they need when they feel the physical need, or the mental health professionals they need when they're in need of mental health help. So I want to thank you all for being here with me. I want to thank the Mill for allowing us to maintain this talk in these circumstances, even though hopefully we'll be able to do this physically next March, I hope. So if anybody's watching from France, we have our website, CURA, that's online. CURA, how do you say tiret in English? My English was okay for that long, but we have this website, hyphen, of course, cura-music.org, where there's the results of our study, and we have how do you call that, a book of names. I want to say book of names. You will get it.
Yeah.
We have a book
It's
of
a
names,
directory.
a directory, right?
Mm.
That we started, which I feel is part of the solutions. The more artists can get an access to who exists and who they can reach, the easiest is going to be when you have a problem. And I, as an artist, went through this search, and it's not clear right now if you're not feeling well as an artist. Google is not going to give you that many answers. So I feel like a lot of us can get together and work on making this Google search easier. So thank you, everyone, and hopefully see you soon in the real world.